This week on the Destination Angler.
They jump, obviously, that's part of it. They literally fight till their death. I mean, they don't give up. You know, some fish you catch, like a snook or a redfish, you catch them, they fight for a little bit, and then they kind of come to the boat. But tarpon just do not give up. You got them on the reel, and you're just using the rod and using the angles to try to beat that fish and kind of break that fish down and you know, try to land them as quickly as you can.
So you earn those things, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haig. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of the Destination Angler, brought to you by J.P. Ross Fly Rods, makers of happiness, one rod at a time. Get outside and simply fish. And by Catch Flow, fly fishing's only artist-crafted fly fishing themed footwear brand. Express your passion off the water and shop today at catchflow.com. That's catchflo.com. You can join in the conversation with the Destination Angler Facebook and Instagram pages, where we post pictures of the destinations we cover and top fly picks from the guides and experts we interview. Coming up on the Destination Angler, we're headed north to Newfoundland for Atlantic salmon. Then we're headed out to the great state of Utah and the Flaming Gorge area for backcountry tiger trout, rainbow, cutthroat, and even grayling. And be sure to backcast to catch the last episode on climate change, where we ask Helen Neville, senior scientist with Trout Unlimited, just what in the world is going on with our climate and what anglers can do about it. Turns out a lot. You won't want to miss these shows. And today our destination is Everglades National Park and a remote outpost there called Flamingo, Florida. And our guest is Captain Jason Sullivan, owner of Rising Tide Charters. The Everglades is a unique and diverse fishery with some of the best saltwater fly fishing in the world. From stalking the flats for redfish and snook to casting a fly to schools of rolling tarpon, this fishery offers off-the-grid year-round opportunities for the adventuresome angler. Jason has been fishing South Florida all his life and guiding for the past 10 years. He's an Orvis-endorsed guide and received the Orvis Saltwater Fly-Fishing Guide of the Year award in 2018. Jason is a super interesting guy, having attended college on a baseball scholarship and played in the minors for 3 years. So today we'll cover the ins and outs of this incredible tarpon fishery, plus the history of the area and the good progress being made with conservation efforts, and even a little bit about the Burmese Python problem in the Everglades. Let me tell you, if you're looking for a place to completely unplug while chasing these amazing game fish, the Everglades is the place to be, and Jason is the guy to tell us about them. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on, Steve.
For sure. Yeah. So I got your name from a good friend of mine here in Indianapolis who fished with you last year and said you were the best guide he's ever had. So I thought, man, I got to give this guy a call and get him on the show. So you were out today fishing, right? And did pretty well.
Yeah. I was down where I typically fish, down at Flamingo. And yeah, we had a pretty good day. Got into some snook and redfish, and got into a couple of medium-sized tarpon, and you know, we had a pretty good day.
Is that what you call a grand slam?
Yeah, grand slam. We actually caught a sea trout, which would make that considered an Everglades grand slam. It was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's great. How often does that happen?
It doesn't happen often, because we don't typically chase all four species. But occasionally you'll be fishing and bycatch kind of maybe a sea trout or a redfish or something if you're not fishing for those particular species. And, probably maybe, a dozen times a year, maybe 15 times a year it'll happen,
Okay. And you're doing a couple hundred trips a year, right?
Yeah, I end up fishing between 200 and 230 days a year.
Man, that's a lot of fishing.
Yeah.
All right, so I got to ask you, where in the world is Flamingo, Florida?
So Flamingo, Everglades National Parks takes up the kind of the southwest tip of the peninsula of Florida. And the national park's about, I think it's about 1.2 or 1.3 million square acres, in that southwest tip of Florida. And Flamingo, if you can kind of picture in your head, is the southernmost central spot on the actual peninsula of Florida. There's a little couple ramps down there, some visitor centers, part of the national park, and that's kind of where the outpost is for where we fish.
And it's literally an outpost, huh?
Yeah, really. There's not much down there. Once you enter the national park from Homestead, Florida City area, it's a 38-mile drive down a 2-lane road through the national park, which is actually a pretty cool drive. That takes you all the way down to that southern end of the peninsula and takes you right down to Flamingo.
Sounds awesome. So you're kind of off the grid down there, huh?
Yeah, completely off the grid. It's like it's almost like going back, or it is. It's like going back in time. The best part about it, there's no condos, there's no jet skis, there's no houses, there's no nothing. It's just walking back in time to what Florida used to look like, and very, very little cell service. So you're completely off the grid, and it's like you unplug every day and just kind of escape. It's really a cool experience.
Yeah, that sounds neat. So, like, I'm trying to picture the houses. Are they those houses on stilts, or maybe those shacks that are kind of sitting along the beach, or what's it look like?
Oh, it's not. There's nothing. There's no. It's since it is a national park.
Oh,
it's nothing. There's nothing there. It's white sand beach for miles. It's mangroves and creeks and rivers and bays, and just complete, absolute nothing there. So it's really, really awesome.
Wild country.
Yeah.
What is the history of the park? Like, when was it established? And I know you're kind of a history buff. Fill us in a little bit on what went on there years ago.
Yeah. So the park, it became a national park in 1947, and they designated, this particular area. It's 1.3 million square acres of land, which is probably about a third of what the Everglades was originally before, people started settling in South Florida, which obviously very grateful for that, to have this area designated as a national park. But people started coming down here at the turn of the century, 1900s is when kind of reported the first settlers down here in Flamingo. And there wasn't a lot of families that lived down here. Maybe a dozen or so. It was a very, very tough and rough place to live, because you're so off the grid and so far from any city. Miami, or West Palm Beach were kind of the first cities down here. So people started coming down, and the main thing down here was plume hunting, was hunting these, shooting these birds and selling their feathers, and that was kind of the main deal down here. And then it kind of went into, once they outlawed that, then it kind of went into some more outlaw stuff, kind of moonshining and bootlegging and stuff like that. And that kind of got pushed away, and finally became a national park, which, obviously we're all grateful for that.
And what caused you to set up shop down there? I imagine it's good fishing, but was that it?
Yeah, the fishing's great. The fishing is, in my personal opinion, I've fished in South Florida my entire life. There's great fishing in the Keys. There's great, there's some good fishing in Miami and up the East Coast of Florida. But as far as overall, everyday, really, really good fishing, the Everglades National Park is second to none. And not only that, that's obviously a big draw, but just the whole experience, making that drive to the national park, unplugging from your everyday life, and potentially going out even on the craziest, busiest holiday weekend, going out on the boat and not seeing another person all day long, not another boat all day long. I don't know if there's not too many places in this country that you can still do that.
Yeah, I agree. What makes the fishing so good?
Well, it's a big estuary. There's obviously it's a huge area. There's a lot of water flow. There's a lot of bait. It has its issues, as far as getting fresh, clean water to it. I mean, we've been talking about Everglades restoration for 30 years.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, it's not touched, it's almost, other than the water, there's water flows. Man's manipulated the water flows, but overall, like I was, saying earlier, there's no condos, there's no houses, there's no runoff, from cities. So it's still natural. There's areas where there's habitat for fish to grow. And that's probably the most thing. There's bait, there's habitat for bait and shrimp, and then the fish just flourish from all that.
That's awesome. You can go, back into the Everglades one day and out into Florida Bay the next, and you got a lot of options, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a crazy amount of different species that you can catch from, the most popular, the tarpon, snook, and redfish. But you can run, like you said, run in the backcountry and catch bass one day and snook and tarpon, and then, go out front is what people that fish out of Flamingo call Florida Bay, out front, and be in a completely different area and looking area as well, because now you're on shallow, clear water flats, and you could be fishing for tailing redfish, potentially bonefish. It's such a unique and diverse fishery. And there's a lot of options. That's kind of the best part about that place as far as that goes.
Keeps it interesting. So when clients call you, do they usually say, yeah, I want to do this kind of fishing? Or do you usually have to have a conversation with them? Well, okay, we got a lot of options here. What would you like to do?
Yeah. I mean, depending on the season, some species fish a little bit better certain times of the year or certain conditions, and if someone wants to target a particular species, for example, tarpon, we'll kind of talk about best times of year, the most consistent weather patterns, because weather has a lot to do with it. But yeah, if it's just going out and seeing the Everglades and fishing on any given day of the year, you can always find something to do.
Okay. Can you give me just a quick rundown, like if you walk through the seasons, like what kind of fish are you targeting at different types of the year? Can you give us a little rundown on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So snook, which is a very popular species to chase down here, you can pretty much catch those all year round. The water, the salinity levels affect, kind of the movement of the snook, because it, I believe it affects the bait, which affects the movement of the snook. But certain times of year, you can catch them really good out on the Gulf Coast, which would be the summertime. And then as we move into our drier season, the water gets a little bit saltier in the backcountry, and then you start getting, snook pushing back in there. And, in the wintertime, that's a really popular area to fish for snook. But you could catch, most of these species, snook, redfish, sea trout, you could catch those fish pretty much every single day of the year. Now, the weather is just going to determine where you fish. As far as tarpon goes, which is another extremely popular fish to chase, between April and May down here in South Florida, April, May, and June would be considered our tarpon season, as far as migratory fish moving through the Keys and the Everglades. And, but that's not the only time you can catch tarpon. And that's what I don't think a lot of people realize. Some of the best tarpon fishing is going on right now, and it's October.
Really? Huh.
Yeah. So between October and November, it's pretty consistent. You're going to see a lot of fish. You're going to get a lot of opportunities. And then once we start getting about World Series time is what I usually tell people, end of October, early November, we start getting our cold fronts. And when a cold front blows through and the water temps drop into the low 70s and upper 60s, the tarpon fishing kind of, you almost on a day to day, if a cold front comes in, they're gone. So
they're gone.
Yeah, they're gone. And then once it warms up in between these cold fronts, usually cold front can come through, and then you have 3 to 5 days of warm weather, and then another front comes through, depending on the frequency of them. And in between those cold fronts, between November and let's say March, you have some pretty good tarpon fishing.
Okay, they come back.
Oh yeah,
if it warms, water warms up, they're right. Wow.
You could set your clock to right when as soon as that water, hits 74, 75, even 72, you'll start to see these fish start coming back and rolling and being active. So basically between November and March, it depends on the weather, but we catch tarpon all year long. Every month of the year, we'll chase tarpon on certain days.
And are you getting the big ones during that migratory season, April, May, June?
Yeah, you're getting the big ones in this, but you're getting the biggest fish that we catch of the year, believe it or not, is like February, March.
Really? How come?
Yeah. You get these big fish, these big, 100-plus pounders. They kind of float in from the Gulf on these warm days in between these cold fronts. And maybe they've started some of these some of these fish start migrating south already, and they come to the Everglades and hang out for a little bit and feed. And then they move on down the coast come end of March, April, May. And they do their thing down in the lower Keys, and then they come back around. But we have fish, like I was just saying, all year long that would be considered resident fish.
Okay.
So we'll have big fish all year round. And when I say big fish, 40, 50 plus, up to 100, 110. That's what I consider a bigger tarpon. But as far as the baby tarpon goes, it doesn't matter. You can catch those year round. Those baby tarpon, 5, 10, 15 pounder, doesn't matter the weather, doesn't matter the water. You could fish for those guys year round.
Okay. Yeah. Are they a lot of fun to catch?
Oh, they're a blast, especially on like a 7-weight or 8-weight. They're even a 6-weight. They're a lot of fun because they're very active. They love to eat. They have, they're small and they're trying to get big, so they're eating everything. So it's just a fun fish.
Aggressive, huh?
Yeah.
Hi everybody, this is JP from JP Ross Fly Rods. We're happy to support Steve and sponsor the Destination Angler podcast. Do us a favor and check us out on our website, smallstreamflyfishing.com. JP Ross Fly Rods and Company has been around since 1997. We've made thousands of fly rods with one purpose, helping you get outside and be happy. So check out our line of small stream fly rods like our Muir 7-foot, 5-piece, 3-weight E-glass, our famous Beaver Meadow series of rods starting at 5-foot 2-weight, and don't forget our 6.5-foot 3-weight 4-piece, and now our new Beaver Meadow S-glass, 6.5, 2-weight, 3-weight, all the way up to 8-foot 5-weight, all in 4-piece. Check us out, please, at smallstreamflyfishing.com. And thanks a lot for listening. We'll see you on the water.
Let me ask you, I bet you've seen a lot of crazy stuff back in the Everglades in your years guiding. Can you tell us a story or two?
Yeah, I've seen, if you're down there every day, you see some crazy stuff. I've seen, hit alligators on the side of the road, driving in, which is kind of crazy. You see these big alligators sometimes just sitting in the middle of the road in the middle of the night when you're driving down.
Oh my gosh.
You see the Burmese pythons.
Oh, do you really? Were they released by people out of their aquariums or something? How'd they get in there?
Yeah. Some of them have gotten released because they get massive. So they get to a certain size and people get scared and then dump them in the Everglades. But really where they came on was in 1992 when Hurricane Andrew came through. And the hurricane flattened Homestead. At the eye of the storm.
Right, I remember that.
And then there was a Burmese python breeding facility in Homestead. And boom, that thing got wiped down. And those snakes went right to the Everglades because there's a lot of food. And, there was a lot of rabbits, raccoons. There was a time 20, 25 years ago where driving down the road in the morning, you had to kind of be really watching because you'd see deer, foxes, raccoons, rabbits, Now, I couldn't tell you the last time I've seen one of those.
You think they're getting eaten by those snakes?
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. The snakes have decimated small game population in the Everglades. It's a major.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Huh. Are there any bears down there?
I've never seen bears. I know there are some.
Or panther?
I don't know how many. I've never seen one, and I've only seen one panther ever driving down there. Yeah. I think there's only about 150 of them left in South Florida. They need a huge distance for them to kind of live. And they just don't have anymore here. It's just crammed with people, you know.
Yeah, man.
They're losing their habitat. Yeah.
So a lot of my listeners are trout anglers. So here we're doing a show about tarpon. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the species itself. And so I did a little research here and I found a couple of things. So I read that species dates back over 100 million years. So it's an ancient species. Females can live up to 50 years, males 30 years. They're toothless and swallow their prey whole. And the all tackle record is 285 pounds, and the Florida record is not too far off that, about 243 pounds. So, yeah, have you seen fish, up in that range, like over 150, 200 pounds?
Yeah, I mean, we hooked a fish maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I had a pretty experienced angler on the boat, pretty experienced tarpon angler on the boat, and he hooks a fish, and the fish jumps, and he came off, and I looked at him and I said, "Don't say a word." And then we got down because we were both like, jaw was on the bottom of the boat, and I said, "Give me an estimate when I count to 3 of what you thought how big that fish was." And I said 180, and he said 175. That was probably the biggest fish. But typically,
wow.
Yeah, typically we're fishing fish between 40 and 60 pounds. Maybe in the early spring and wintertime, they'll hit 80 to 100, but most of the fish are 40 to 60 pounders, which is plenty. That's the best size.
That's awesome fish. What can you tell me about like the fight of a tarpon? Like what's the allure of tarpon fishing? I imagine it's their jump and they fight hard, but what do you think?
Yeah. So the way they eat, a lot of times you can see them eat, and they'll come up and they come up and they turn when they eat. So, that you'll see a big flash, you'll see their mouth open at times and eat your fly. And it's a pretty out of body experience seeing it for the first time, especially if it's close and you see it, because, the fish is 5 feet long, 4 feet long, 6 feet long. It's a big animal. And a lot of people that aren't used to seeing that it could be quite an experience. But yeah, they jump. Obviously, that's part of it. They literally fight till their death. I mean, they don't give up. Some fish you catch, like a snook or a redfish, you catch them, they fight for a little bit, and then they kind of come to the boat. But tarpon just do not give up. And
Really?
yeah, and it's just quite an experience. And they're not easy. And that's another allure, I think. They're a challenging fish to catch. There's 100 ways to screw up your cast, and then once you hook the fish, there's 100 ways to screw that up.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably the allure, because you could hook a lot of fish, but landing them, that, like I said, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I bet. Well, can you kind of walk us through like that, your whole process of, sighting, hooking, casting to hooking, fighting, landing? Like, what's that whole process like on your boat?
Yeah. So here in the Everglades, and I'll kind of break it down to kind of migratory keys, tarpon, and kind of what I do in the Everglades. So a lot of people think, because I get a lot of people that say, "Oh, okay, this is what I'm thinking, tarpon." So most people think you're tarpon fishing, you're sitting on the ocean side of the keys, and you got a migratory group of fish, 10, 12, 20, whatever, swimming down the bank, and you're just staked off and you wait for them and you make a cast to them. And that happens in the springtime in the Keys.
Oh, okay.
And those fish are migrating. And that's what a lot of people have done, some tarpon fishing. A lot of people have done that or seen videos on that or whatnot. And that water's crystal clear, and it's a whole visual game. In the Everglades, the water could be stained. It could be clean, clear. It depends on the weather. So a lot of the times when it's warmer out in the later spring into the summer and into the fall, we're fishing rolling tarpon. So you'll see these fish rolling, breathing air, and you kind of stalk up to a group of them or one or two or whatever it may be, and then you kind of present your fly to that fish.
Okay. Hey, real quick, what are they doing when they're rolling and they're actually breathing air? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So tarpon have gills and they have an air pocket or an air bladder. So that's why those fish have been around for 100 million years, because they can live in any type of water, salt, fresh, little ditches behind your house, any type of water you can catch a tarpon in, and they can live in it. So that, if the oxygen's low, they can just roll and breathe and survive. That's the unique thing with tarpon. And that's kind of how you find them. You see them rolling, or you're looking for them. You're looking at bays, creeks, and rivers, and they'll move in and out with the tide based on where the food is for them. But in the Everglades, like I was telling you, the Keys are migrating, and it's a very tough game. In the Everglades, they come to the Everglades to feed, so it's a different mentality of the fish. So in the Keys, when they're migrating, it's more they're migrating. They're on their way going somewhere. They're not necessarily thinking of eating. You could catch a lot of fish in the Keys doing that. Guys do it all the time. But in the Everglades, they're there specifically to grow, get big, and eat. So it's a completely different mindset. So you find fish, you got a chance to feed them, But so we'll pole in these bays and creeks and rivers, and look for rolling fish, and we throw to them. And it's, a lot of times they'll roll and go down to the bottom. So it's a slow game, stripping to them. And then once you hook that fish, it's just a matter of staying tight. You come tight to that fish. I really don't believe in a big strip or strip set. I like guys coming tight to the fish, and that's really it. And then as soon as that fish is hooked, then it's, you're aggressive to him until he takes off, and you let him put you on the reel, not the other way around. At least that's kind of what I preach.
Hey anglers, I'm proud to introduce our newest sponsor, Catchflow, fly fishing's one and only artist-crafted fly fishing themed footwear brand. With new product drops each month, Catchflow's large and growing selection of fun, casual fly fishing themed shoes, flip-flops, and socks are all about helping you express your passion off the water. I own a pair of Catchflow shoes myself, and man, let me tell you, they're pretty cool. And with the holiday shopping season near, Catchflows are the perfect unique gift for the passionate fly angler in your life. Explore and buy at catchflow.com, and when you do, be sure to use coupon code DAPOD10 at checkout for 10% off your first order. One of the cool things about Catchflow is they donate 2% of your purchase to support Project Healing Waters and Casting for Recovery. So stop by catchflow.com today and pick up a pair. That's CATCHFLO.com. So when you say come tight, what is the angler doing to hook that fish then? If he's not strip setting, he's not trout setting, it's something in between, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely not trout setting. So when that fish eats, all I have or at least I try to explain, all I want you to do is strip. You see the fish eat, or you feel him. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. You come tight with your left hand, your stripping hand, and just literally hold that fly line tight and slowly lift your rod about really 3 or 4 inches just to get the slack out. And then that's it. I don't like,
and they're cooked.
I don't like a big strip set. You definitely don't want to move your rod too early, because of the way they eat, they turn. So if you lift that rod too early, you literally just pull that fly right out of that fish's face.
Okay.
So that's where the trout.
So there's a pause.
But yeah, I like guys just coming tight to that fish and then slowly lifting the rod to get the slack out, and then that's it. And then you're stripping. If that fish stays close to the boat, you're stripping him, and you let him put you on the reel, because those fish, a lot of guys will hold the line and then start reeling on them. Just try to get that line off the deck and on the reel. But if you don't have that fish under control, he may run one way, he may decide to come at you, and the worst thing in the world is having that fish create slack, because that's going to find a way out.
That's the worst. So that fly can come unbuttoned with a little slack then.
Exactly. And then, obviously, everyone hears about that fish jumping, just bowing to them, just giving them a little bit of slack. It's not an overboard thing, but just so when that fish jumps, you just kind of lower your rod or bow to the king, as everybody says, just to give them a little bit of slack. And then as soon as that thing's in the water, you get your rod back up and get all that slack out.
All right, and backing up just for a second. So what's a typical cast? Like you going 30 feet, 60 feet? What's kind of typical?
Typical, I would probably say 50 feet.
Okay.
A lot of times, yeah, I mean, you don't need to be an 80 to 90 foot caster to catch tarpon in the Everglades. It helps. It helps, obviously, but it's definitely not needed. As long as you can get your fly, like if a fish rolls, let's say a fish rolls at your 11 o'clock, you have about 3 to 5 seconds to get your fly where it needs to be in front of that fish.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if you could do that in 3 to 5 seconds, 50, 60 feet, then that's way more important than being able to cast 100 feet.
Okay. So you're standing there with your line kind of all coiled up, waiting for, are you the one that's spotting them? You're saying, okay, see that one right there? Go for that one? Or how's that work?
Yeah, I'll be pulling, and you see, once you see, if you've never seen a tarpon roll in person, once you see one, you know exactly what you're looking for. It's obvious. Yeah, everybody, you'll see it. You know, a lot of times if you're fishing a big bay, you might get a fish rolling at 20 feet. You might get a fish rolling at 80 feet. You might get a fish rolling at 40 feet. So I've had guys catch them right off 10 feet off the front of the boat. So
oh my gosh.
It's not necessarily the cast lengthwise. It's just more about putting it in there as quickly as you can.
And are you trying to lead them a little bit? Can it splat on the water? Or are they kind of leader shy or fly shy like that?
No, they're not leader shy. I use all monofilament leader. I don't use fluorocarbon.
What pound test?
I'll use, I usually fish a 60-pound bite tippet, and I'll either fish a 16 or 20-pound class tippet. I don't know if you're familiar with the IGF standards.
Yeah.
I'll usually fish that, and when a fish rolls, a lot of times a tarpon is a very lazy feeder. They're not going to go out of their way to eat something. They kind of wait for something to get in their face, and then they might eat it. So what these fish will do is you find out which way the current's moving. And a lot of times these fish, just very, very similar to trout fishing, these fish will roll into the current, but they're not necessarily moving. They're just kind of floating around. So what I'll tell guys to do is when you see a fish roll in range, I'll have them cast beyond the fish because they're rolling, and a lot of them are going down to the bottom. So I'll get it beyond them and maybe a foot or two, whichever way the current's moving, and then kind of sweep it to that fish. And as long as you go beyond that fish, it gets down by the time you're in that zone of where that fish is in the water column. And that's usually your best bet. And that's strictly talking rolling tarpon. In the wintertime, we'll fish laid up tarpon. And that's a whole sight fishing thing. That's a whole different ball game. And that's some of my favorite fishing of the year, the laid up fish.
Laid up, meaning they're laying back into the mangroves or something?
No, they're so in between those, kind of what I was talking about earlier with those cold fronts, this is all January, February, March, even in April. You'll get these warmer days in between these cold fronts. And if you get the weather right where it slicks out, these fish will literally float right up to the surface and just lay there. And you could be in the middle of a bay. It could be along a shoreline. And what they're doing is just soaking up that sun, getting that heat from the sun.
Yeah.
And, you're pulling along in 4 or 5 foot of water, and there's a 80-pound fish, a 6-foot animal, literally just, I call them sleepers too, just laid up sleeping right in front of you. And when you get a bite from one of those fish, you're done. Huh. You're done.
Is that right?
You see that eat right at the boat. It never gets old.
Oh my gosh. So like a sleeper fish, are you sticking it right on his nose, or what are you doing there?
Yeah, I'll usually, depending on the angle of where I see him and where the boat is and how we can feed him. Ideally, you want to put it right in his face and bring it away from him. That's usually what gets the bite. Sometimes they lay almost like what you would think a tailing redfish would lay, with their head down and their tail up. Like maybe sometimes the tail will break the surface. If it's calm enough, you could see it. If not, they'll literally sleep with their head down, And what I like to do is throw that fly on either the right or left side of the body, right in the middle of the body, and let it sink down to his head, and then strip it. And usually that'll you get a reaction from that fish.
Okay. Yeah, are you using floating lines or just weighted flies or what?
Yeah, I'll throw to the laid up fish. I'll throw regular tarpon flies that I tie, no weight on them. And then if the fish are in a fast moving river or creek, I have a big fly that I like using with weight on it that I call the river monster. And it's a big, massive, obnoxious fly. It's got a little weight on it, drops down quickly, and we'll throw that thing.
Okay. And you tie all your own flies, huh?
Yeah, I tie them all.
What's the life expectancy of a fly in your fly box? How long do they last?
I can usually get, if I spend a little bit extra time and put a little glue on it, I can usually get a couple of days on them. Yeah, I mean, the tarpon fly might last one fish or it might last 4 fish.
Okay. They get pretty ripped up, huh?
Yeah, it just depends on what that fish does to it, you know?
Yeah. So what kind of patterns, like what are you imitating? Minnows or crabs, crayfish? What are you imitating?
I throw a lot of big flies, so, I think any type of big bait, a mullet, tarpon and flamingo love mullet because there's a lot of them around. So that's what I throw. I tie a lot of mullet patterns. If I'm fishing laid up fish, I might downsize it to kind of a small, tiny little medium sized minnow, but nothing nothing real specific. Just something that's big, moves water, and grabs your attention.
I got you.
Yeah, I really don't think I really don't think there's no special pattern that, I think if you show the fly or you show the fish what you're throwing, you put it in their face enough, you're gonna get bit. I mean, these fish are here to eat. So.
Then are you giving the fly a lot of motion? Are you stripping it past them, or what are you doing?
So I put a lot of ostrich herl in my flies.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you've seen ostrich in the water, but you literally don't have to strip it. It moves so much. It's like marabou.
Just wiggles.
Yeah, I mean, it's just got so much flow in it, so much play in it. I've had more than 20 times. I've had guys waiting for a fish to roll with their fly dangling in the water and get bit by a tarpon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
I mean, they're just got their line coiled up, but the fly sitting in the water next to the boat, and up comes a tarpon. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, some guys will keep their fly in the water, kind of waiting, even though the line's on the deck, fly's just in the water. Maybe they make a cast or whatever, just kind of hanging out, waiting for a fish to roll. And that fly will be dangling in the water, and a fish comes up and grabs it.
Oh, that's funny. What are you looking for? Like, what's a really good tarpon day? Like, what are all the things coming into play? Like moon, tides, weather, water temps. What's the mix there?
So it depends on the year. Obviously, the wintertime, you want water temps in the 74, 75 degrees. I always like I like a bigger tide. So around the full moons, new moons, I like those tides because it's more moving the water. But if you find some fish, even if you're on a weaker tide, you can still typically get some fish to bite. And, some of those days are great as well. But an average day, I would say you're getting 3 to 5 bites a day.
Okay.
It's pretty good numbers. I mean, you can hook a lot of fish down here. I mean, I've had days where I've had guys hook 43 fish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all big fish. All 60.
Did they realize how lucky they were when they hooked 43 fish?
Yeah. I don't know. It was quite the day, but yeah, I mean, plenty of days where you get 7, 8, 9 bites. If you can find the right fish, right group of fish, and the weather's good, you can do some damage on those guys. Okay.
And good weather, meaning sunny. What do you like good weather wise?
Light winds. So these fish will roll. Obviously, it's calmer in the mornings and down here in Florida. So you'll get, we get a typical northeast, east, southeast. That's our kind of our winds, our prevailing winds. So the Everglades is on the southwest tip. So if you have an east wind, that west coast of Florida, which that's essentially what we're fishing, is calm. especially in the morning. So your first 4 or 5 hours of the morning is a great opportunity because it's calm and these fish are rolling. So there's not a lot of waves. There's not a lot of motion on the water. So the water's real calm and still, and that's going to make those fish roll. And then once that wind comes up, you get a chop on the surface. It creates a lot of oxygen in the water, and they don't necessarily need to roll.
Okay.
They can sit on the bottom, and you could go into a bay and not see a fish roll and think there's no fish there, but go there the next morning and they're rolling all over the place. Well, those fish just kind of were laying down on the bottom in the middle of the day.
Yeah. Can you catch?
Oh yeah, you could catch them. You could catch them with a fly rod. It's tough because you don't know where they're at.
Yeah.
Like I tell people, tarpon, it's a big game animal.
Yeah, totally.
When do you hunt a big game animal? You hunt them at dawn and dusk. During the middle of the day, those fish are kind of laying, or those animals, deer or elk or whatever, they're probably laying in the brush. Same thing with the tarpon.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Do you ever fish at night?
Yeah, you can. I used to fish at night in Miami a little bit, but, you'll get those fish in the wintertime and they'll come in some of these big inlets. And, if you can get the right tide, it's not as good as it was, 10 years ago, but it's still pretty darn good.
That's awesome. What's your personal best?
Size-wise, I landed one that was 20.
120?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Can you tell us the story how you got that guy?
Yeah, so I was fishing first thing in the morning, fishing in a bay, and I had my 10 weight, which I typically throw 11 weights at these fish. So I had my 10 weight, and we were just fishing a bunch of fish that were 40, 50 pounders. And this happens a lot too, is, you got these big schools of fish and they're all a certain size, but there's some bigger fish kind of mixed in with them. And I threw at 3 fish rolled and I threw at them and they were all about 30 pounds or so. And I came tight to this fish and, man, this thing came out of the water and I was like, that's not the fish that I threw at. And I got a 10 weight in my hand.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, it took me about, 35 minutes or so, 40 minutes to land that fish, and that thing just kicked my butt.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. So what are they doing when it's taking 35 minutes? Are you chasing them in your boat? Are they taking line all the time? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, once you get past, like, the, average fish will jump 4, 5, 6 times. Once you kind of get past that, if you're still tight to the fish, you're just pulling on her, and it's just a bulldog fight. It's work after that.
Okay. Yeah. You got them on the reel now? You're reeling them in?
Yep. You got them on the reel and you're just really just using the rod and using the angles to try to beat that fish and kind of break that fish down and try to land them as quickly as you can.
So you earn those things, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Now, with a fish that size, did you have to be really careful how you release those? Like, you keep them in the water, don't you?
Yeah, so tarpon in Florida, the law is over 40 inches have to stay in the water. Under 40 inches, you could take out of the water if you want a picture. But over 40 inches has to stay in the water. You can buy a tarpon tag, which allows you to kill a tarpon for a world record only. But other than that, the 40 inches and greater has to stay in the water. And I've done a lot of research with bonefish, tarpon, and truss, tagging fish and kind of studying patterns, movement patterns of these fish. And if that water temp is over 84, 85 degrees, and if you don't land that fish quickly, the mortality rate is really high on these fish. And that fish might swim. You might revive them and you might swim away or at least kick off. But, if you fight a fish in 85 degree water temps for an hour or 45 minutes, in the Everglades, that whole region, that mortality rate is pretty high.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And these fish live a long.
Yeah. That's why it's important to really, learn how to pull on these fish and get them in as quickly as you can.
Get them in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because how old's a 100-pound tarpon?
It could be 15 years old. It could be 50 years old. A lot of it depends on it depends on the where that fish lives and the food source.
Gotcha.
I think I think there was a tarpon that the guys broke a 6-pound class tippet record, 142 pounds, I believe, and I think they determined it was only 8 or 9 years old. So, it just depends on the food source that's available to that fish.
Yeah. Tell us about your fishing journey. What got you so excited at maybe at an early age and got you into fishing, and how did you end up, guiding in South Florida?
Yeah, so we always fish growing up. There's lakes, there's canals. That's always a thing that we did growing up. That was kind of the big thing, was pond hopping for bass and peacock bass, and believe it or not, in my backyard growing up, in one of the kind of the city canals, we'd catch snook, we'd catch peacock bass, we'd catch largemouth, we'd catch little tarpon. So that was always something that we did. I grew up playing baseball my entire life, and there's two things that I wanted to do. I wanted to either make it to the major leagues, which that was obviously not going to happen, or I wanted to be a fishing guide. So I figured that was a lot easier.
Well, you got close on the baseball thing. You played in the minors. That's pretty good.
Yeah. I got lucky and played a couple years after college in the minor leagues, and that was a great experience. But like I said, I think I was really wanted to be a fishing guide, and that was, as I was getting older, that was really what I was kind of focusing on. I just didn't know how to go about doing it. I kind of started fishing the Everglades and falling in love with that place, and I figured this is what I want to do, and this is the place I want to do it in. So,
who were your influences? Did you have anybody that kind of brought you along in all this?
Yeah, I have a good friend of mine. He's still guiding down there. His name's Mark Giacoba, and we became good friends. And he's the one that really kind of pushed me to get my captain's license and start doing it. And he's one of the best, in my opinion. He's one of the best guys in the Everglades, and he's the one that really got me started. And I owe a lot to him, because he's the one that kind of pushed me over that hump to go ahead and get going with it. And he gave me a lot of, early on, you get your captain's license, you get everything kind of squared away, and it's not like people are going to be knocking on your door or calling you, because no one knows who you are. So he sent me a lot of business, and really helped me out, get me started.
Thank you, Mark. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then you were the Orvis Saltwater Guide of the Year. Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. 2018, and that was quite an honor, and very humbled for that. And I couldn't believe it when they announced that.
Did they give you a call and say, "Hey, by the way, you just won this award," or how's that come about?
Well, they said, so you got 3 finalists for saltwater, or for every category, and he called me. One of the guys from Orvis called me in 2017 and said, "Hey, you're one of the finalists. You think you can make it to the because they have a guide rendezvous every year, and you think you can make it to that?" And that's when they announced all the winners. And I said, it's just like right in the middle of April, and that's like my busiest time of year. And I was like,
"Oh man,
yeah. I can't get out. I just can't make it." I'm like, "Okay, no problem." So the next year they call me, and it was like, "Hey, you're a finalist." And same thing. Would you like to come out? And I'm like, it's April. And they said, no. We really need you to come out. I said, all right.
Well, pay me to come, right?
Yeah.
I get $700 a day. Pay me to come.
So I went out and they have a big dinner and all that stuff, and it was really, really a cool experience.
No kidding. Yeah. So and you took Lee Perkins himself fishing once, I read.
Dave Perkins.
Oh, Dave. Okay.
Yeah.
That's his
Dave
son.
Perkins. Yeah, that's Lee's son. Dave and Perk, they were kind of, I think Perk just retired. I think Perk's son's taken over now, Simon. But Dave and Perk were kind of Orvis, for so many years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, really turned it into a powerhouse from what I've heard.
Absolutely. Great company.
Any other famous people you've taken guiding?
No, not really. A couple of football players from the Dolphins, which is kind of cool. but no one really notable. No one like
Okay.
super famous.
Isn't Larry Zonka a big hunter and fisherman?
He is. He's. I think he's out in Alaska though most of the time.
Oh, is he? Yeah, I've seen him doing some hunting shows. I imagine he fishes too. But when I growing up as a kid, man, I used to love the Dolphins and Zonka and Kick and
Absolutely.
all those guys. They went undefeated. Wasn't it 2 years in a row in the early 70s?
Yeah,
man.
1972.
Yeah. So give me one more story here. I'm curious. What's the funniest thing you've ever seen happen out on your boat as a guide?
I had a guy and his kid, and we were fishing, and it was in March, and a cold front blew through, and it was probably one of the coldest days that I've ever been on the water. I mean, it started off, and again, cold. It's, I'm from South Florida, so you got to bear with me, but it was in the 40s, but the air temp, it was blowing like 25 to 30 out of the north, which made it feel like if you've ever been on a boat in South Florida in the wintertime with that cold north wind, it was miserable all day long. And fishing was okay, but all day long, the dad was telling the kid he was asking me before the trip about falling off the boat. And I'm like, nah, I've never had anybody fall off the boat. Like, don't even worry about it. It's not a thing. We fish like in a foot of water. So he was really concerned about his son falling off the boat. And, for what reason, I don't know, but I kind of assured to him that his son was not going to fall off the boat. And, so the father, strip set the fish and hit him as hard as anybody that I've ever seen. And he just literally hit him so hard he fell off the side of the boat into the water.
So the dad fell in the water?
The dad fell in the water. This is at the middle of the day. I mean, it was so cold. I felt so bad for the guy. I was like, let's just go. This is just
call it a half a day.
But that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
After the fact.
Did he look at you and go, hey, I thought nobody ever fell off the boat. What's the deal?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's hilarious. Well, I guess it's a lesson in being a guide. Just seems like a whole bunch of series of lessons in human nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I wanted to shift gears because I know you're super conservation oriented. What's the story on where we are with the Everglades and how did I know we kind of got ourselves in a mess, this is a man-made mess down there. Can you kind of give us the scoop on what's going on?
Yeah. So we're finally making some headway. After all these years, to give you the kind of the long and the short of it, historically the water would come from north of Lake Okeechobee and it would fill up the lake and the lake would overflow and it would be a river of grass all the way down to Florida Bay. And that was the fresh water supply that was needed down there. And it was a natural thing. Hurricane hit some people. So people started kind of moving around the lake, and just south of the lake, and a hurricane came through. I think it was in 1927 or 1928, and the lake overflowed and killed 2,500, 3,000 people. And, so they decided that can't happen again. So we're gonna build a dike around the southern part of the lake so that doesn't happen again. And that essentially cut off the natural freshwater flow into the Everglades.
Jeez.
And that's where the problem started. And then that land just south of the lake, sugar companies came in, bought all that land up, started growing sugarcane. And they took advantage of it a lot. They dumped wastewater back in the lake. They cut the sugar companies into this, but the Army Corps cut 2 canals that go out to the St. Lucie River and goes out to the Caloosahatchee River on the west coast. And when the water got too high in the lake, that's where that water would filter out as opposed to south. So that's kind of what started over so many years, not getting that fresh water flow down to the Everglades. You get these hypersaline, and the drier times of the year, the bay would get super hypersaline. The water would be high. It would take all the oxygen out of the water, the seagrass would die, and then this is what's kind of a reoccurring effect that's been happening. So you have a couple of roadblocks. You have Tamiami Trail, which is a road that goes from downtown Miami all the way to Tampa, and that goes right across the state, right in the middle of the Everglades. And that was a big barrier where water could not flow.
North-south road you're talking about.
No, east-west. It would go straight across the state, and then it would go, once it got across the state, it'd go north to Tampa.
Okay. So is that Alligator Alley?
No, Alligator Alley is a little bit north. This is Tamiami Trail.
Okay.
US 41.
Gotcha. Different road.
Yeah. So we needed that road to be lifted. And the last few months, they finished this project of lifting the road. So now a lot of fresh water is starting to flow into the park, which is what we needed. So, these organizations like Captains for Clean Water, a lot of people didn't understand what was going on. It's such a complex scenario down here. And they took kind of everything that's going on and got it out to the public. So people started voting differently and got these policies changed and getting all these projects funded from the state and from the federal government to get these, get them funded and get them done, because they've been on the books since 2000. And that's where we're at. So we're at right now we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
The fishing is really good. There's a really, really good fish population, but that also could be because we're just coming off a major hurricane in 2017, which usually makes a lot of fish.
Huh.
So I think we're moving, and there's enough awareness now. And I think that was the biggest key that was missing. There wasn't enough awareness to what's going on and how we can fix this, and trying to put everybody together and get it done,
Right. Can anglers get involved here? Is there people we should be writing to in Congress or the state legislature?
Yeah. If people got on Captains for Clean Water on their website, they put out call of actions all the time.
Okay.
And they make it so easy where all you do is it takes less than 5 seconds to go through an email, click it, send. They have it all written out for you. You put your email in, you click it, and it goes right to congressman or the governor, or whatever it is for Florida. And that is probably the best way to do it. They have a bunch of donations and fundraisers that they do to create awareness, to get travel, they go to Washington all the time. They go to Tallahassee to fight for, the water situation.
Good.
Yeah, that organization has done an amazing job as far as that goes. And that'd probably be the best way to get involved.
Okay. Well, we'll put that on our website, Captains for Clean Water, so listeners can go out there, and if they want to, they can write the government here and get some of these things moving.
Yeah, absolutely.
That sounds fantastic. So I'm glad things are looking up down there for you and for the Everglades. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. I mean, it's hopefully we're going, like I said, hopefully we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, so with Flamingo being out in the middle of nowhere, I always ask my guests, where are some angler-friendly, off-the-beaten-path eating spots? And it sounds like maybe not in Flamingo, but do you have any ideas for folks, some places they might want to stop and visit?
Yeah, well, hopefully soon in Flamingo, because the Hurricane Irma wiped out the visitor center in 2017. And they used to have a restaurant down there. So they're in the process right now of building back the visitor center, and they got plans to put a restaurant back in there. They got plans to put a hotel down there, which they're getting close to finish. They should be done in the next 6 to 8 months with both of those things. So hopefully we'll have a little off the beaten path place to eat down there and place to sleep down there. But as far as right now goes, I tell everybody who's staying down here for a few days to, if they like barbecue, there's a place in Homestead, a little kind of mom and pop place called Shivers.
Okay.
And that's some of the best barbecue that I've ever had.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Scheiberg's.
Yeah, Shivers. It is. It's really, really a place to go. There's another little fruit stand, very well known down here. You drive by it. It's called Robert is Here, and it's a big fruit stand. And they have some of the best milkshakes that you can get, and any flavor you want. I mean, they got like 50 different flavors.
Okay, that sounds good at the end of a day of fishing, I'll bet.
Yeah, after a day of fishing. So.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, hey, Jason, it's been great talking to you for the last hour. It sounds like a ton of fun down there. Sounds like you've really got a great fishery for people to come down there and enjoy. How can people get in touch with you?
They can email me. My email is risingtidecharters@gmail.com. My website has all that information as well, risingtidecharters.com. My phone number's on there. They can call or text. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay.
And I usually, as soon as I get off the water, 3, 4 o'clock when I get cell service, usually when I start calling people back. So a lot of times my phone goes right to voicemail.
Yeah. Kind of lucky you. I kind of envy a job where you literally cannot call people back during the middle of the day. That sounds kind of nice on a lot of days.
I definitely don't take it for granted. I love it.
Yeah, right. Well, it's the life we choose, right? I mean, you chose that life. Good for you. What about Instagram and Facebook? Are you on there?
Yeah, I don't do much on Facebook. I do a lot, not a lot, but a little bit on Instagram, and that's just my name, Captain Jason Sullivan. Yeah, I haven't been super active on it lately, but, if I get something cool, I put it up there. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the whole social media thing, but
yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I try to stay a little bit, on there. If I get something cool or exciting, I might throw it up there. But usually the best way to get a hold of me is just call me on the phone.
Okay. You have a lot of cool and exciting things on your Instagram page. I was just looking at it before we push the record button here, and you like some fish jumping and really nice pictures up there. So check it out, folks. Well, hey, thanks for being on the show, Jason.
Yeah, I appreciate the pleasure. I really appreciate being able to hook up with you and do this.
Yeah, for sure. And I wish you extraordinary success in all your adventures to follow. And folks, thanks for listening. And we'll post some pictures of this destination on our Destination Angler Facebook and Instagram pages. And maybe Jason can take some pictures of some of those flies he was talking about, and we can put those out there as well. What do you think, Jason?
I certainly can do that.
That'd be awesome. All right. And you guys can DM me or email me with comments and suggestions at shaig50, that's shaigh50 @gmail.com. And if you like the show, tag a buddy, and please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. As always, our music is by Brothers Fountain, a great little band out of Colorado. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.